Paul Bunyan. Have you heard the story of Paul Bunyan? He was a famous lumberjack. A lumberjack is someone who cuts down trees. A dozen storks were needed to carry baby Paul Bunyan to his parents. They were all tired out when they landed. You see, baby Paul was as big as 3 grown men. Paul's mama and papa used a wagon for his bed. It took a pair of horses to pull it. They drove that wagon up and down the mountains to rock baby Paul to sleep. Like any baby, Paul didn't walk too well at first. He'd stand up, take a few steps, and fall down with a thud. Every time he fell, the ground shook for miles around. Cows in barns bounced up and hit the ceiling. The neighbors weren't happy. Paul's folks decided to move the family to Minnesota. There, Paul grew up and became a lumberjack. Now, Minnesota gets pretty cold, but the year of 2 winters was the coldest year of all. Coffee froze while it was still boiling. Conversations took forever because the words had to thaw before folks could hear them. Some leftover words didn't unfreeze until spring. Then the air was filled with chatter that lasted for weeks. That was the year that Paul Bunyan found a baby ox. It was nearly frozen in the snow. Paul took the calf home and warmed it up, but the ox's hide stayed blue. Paul named his pet ox Babe. Babe grew fast, and soon he was bigger than Paul. Paul built a water tank for Babe to drink from. One day, Babe accidentally knocked the tank over. The lumbermen in the camp would have drowned if it hadn't been for Paul Bunyan's quick action. He dug a ditch to drain the water. That's how the Mississippi River was formed. In spite of accidents like that, the lumberjacks liked Babe. The big blue ox was handy around camp. His head was 42 axe handles wide. The lumberjacks strung a line between Babe's horns and hung all the camp's wash on it. The laundry dried fast because of all the wind up there. Babe was most useful for straightening crooked roads. Paul just hooked one end of the road to Babe. Then Babe took a couple of steps and pulled all the kinks right out of the road. One day, Paul decided to try the same trick on a twisty river so logs could float to the lumber mill faster. Paul fastened the river to Babe. The ox took 2 steps and the river was straight. But the straightened river was longer than it had been. Paul used his axe to chop off the extra bits. We call them the Great Lakes. Paul Bunyan and Babe worked so well together that soon all the work was done. Paul closed up the logging camp. It was time for a vacation. He and Babe decided to take a trip. Where should they go? Paul had heard about the giant sequoia trees in California. They were the biggest trees in the country. So he and Babe started walking west. As they were crossing Arizona, Paul accidentally dragged his axe on the ground. Today, you can still see where this happened. It's called the Grand Canyon. Paul felt kind of bad about that accident. He decided to build a wagon to carry his gear. It would have to be very strong. Paul's knapsack was enormous. Here is your challenge. Help Paul build a wagon that can hold his knapsack and roll without breaking. So first, use your planning sheet to plan, create, and to test your design. So first, design a wagon to hold Paul Bunyan's knapsack. The wagon must be able to roll at least 36 inches without breaking. Next, create. Use the materials to build the wagon you designed. And lastly, test. Test number 1. Place the knapsack on the wagon. Does the wagon hold the weight without breaking? And test number 2. Roll the wagon with the knapsack on it. can it roll at least 36 inches without breaking? Good luck!